Welcome to the People Teaching People podcast. Joining me on the podcast is Anne Mock. Anne is a creator, advocate, and blind storyteller. Leveraging her influential presence on social media, Anne actively utilizes her platform to bring education and awareness to the blind and visually impaired community. She started her business, Purpose in View, to inspire a barrier-free world with a clear vision and purpose to live to your full potential. Anne's recent TEDx talk, Blind Sighted, is a testament to her unwavering belief that true inclusion is not only attainable, but necessary in our world today. I had the immense privilege to connect with Anne through a Jilly Academy virtual alumni event. The Jilly Academy is an online platform curated for small business owners, entrepreneurs, aspiring influencers, and anyone who is wanting to learn the ins and outs of brand strategy, influencer marketing, content creation, photography, digital storytelling, and so much more. During the event, Anne spoke about the work that she does and how the Jilly Academy courses supported her with this work. What she shared about accessibility and social media made me realize that I had a lot more to learn. So I reached out to Anne following the event, and I'm so glad that I did. Thank you so much for joining me today, Anne.
Thank you, Tiana, for having me. So good to be here and chat with you.
I'm excited for this conversation. I have so many questions to ask you, but I wanted to start off with getting to know you a little bit better. And I'd love to know about you and your story and the journey that led you to start Purpose in View.
I originally was working in healthcare actually for a long time, for about 25 years. And I always had a sense that something wasn't quite right with my vision. I always had poor vision since I was little. But as I got older, I noticed it progressing worse and worse. I always, as a kid, had those thick Coke bottle lenses. But as I got older and had the kids, I noticed that I wasn't being able to see what I know I should be able to see. I wasn't able to see the license plates in front of me when I was driving. I wasn't able to see the street signs when I was driving. And I began to start to feel more unsafe. I had gotten laser eye vision, so I knew what was good vision because it was like an aha moment, like, wow, my eyes are so great. But that quickly deteriorated over the next few years after that. And I would keep going to the eye doctor and saying, I can't see what I know I'm supposed to be able to see. And he would check my vision and a visual acuity, and he's like, no, you're fine. And this went on for about 4 visits. So that's every 2 years you get your eyes checked. So this is 8 years. Constantly saying, you're fine. And I thought, I know there's something wrong. And I had already decided to give up driving at that point because I knew there's something wrong. And I started taking the bus and transit. And this was in the prime time of my kids, in activities, swimming, hockey, you name it. And so my husband was taking on those duties of driving. And I would take the bus to work. And finally, the last visit, I thought, you know what? Maybe if I get contact lenses, maybe if they're sticking right on my eyes, maybe I'll see better. But it actually made it far worse. And it was so strange. So I right away went back to the eye doctor and I said, it's worse. And he's like, he thought, huh. So he said, you know what? I'll send you to the retinal specialist. And she sat down with me and she was the first person that made me feel like I wasn't going nuts. And she really listened to me and she told me, I believe you and let's send you for more testing. So we did some testing and then I was diagnosed with an inherited retinal condition called cone rod dystrophy. And on that exact same day that I was diagnosed, I actually got the job of my dreams. So that morning I was diagnosed, and in the afternoon, I had to go to human resources and sign a contract for this job that I had worked so hard for. And I just didn't know what my future held for me. So it took about, in my head, I thought, I'll give myself 5 years, see how this goes. I didn't, nobody knew, nobody at work knew. And I did a great job. I was a really great employee. Only my family and my friends knew. But then I got really, in the last year of it, in about 2018, I knew that it was time to step down. And so I went to CNIB and I started learning orientation and mobility to start using cane to learn kitchen skills. And our home was in a much needed renovation at that time. So I studied universal design and I started getting our home ready for aging in place. And that fall, we started workplace accommodations. So I was actually a procedure room assistant at that time. And I moved to a desk job. And then suddenly in January, I woke up with this headache that was like migraine, and I'd never had before. And actually to this day, I still have. So I wasn't able to return to work, not because of my vision, but because of the headache. And I ended up being bedridden for the first 8 months of that diagnosis. And in that time, the pandemic hadn't quite started yet, but I was very isolating, suffered from a lot of depression. And then the pandemic hit, starting to feel a little bit better, but I was still isolated at home. And everybody was at that time. And I was hearing and reading in the papers about and the news about how it was a struggle for the vision loss community as we had to rely on apps and websites to get everything delivered just like everybody else, but they were inaccessible. And businesses were struggling as well. And how hard it was, with the lack of connection for people. And we were, all relying on our devices. And so that's how I started Purpose in View. I'm a really visual person. I love, home decor and shopping and all kinds of things. But I really wanted to build that connection. And I didn't know anything about really social media. I was never on social media before, but I wanted to make it accessible. So I really took it upon myself to learn about social media, to educate myself, learn how to make it accessible, the ins and outs of it, and to learn about the visually impaired community. Because before this, I've actually never met anybody like me who was visually impaired or come across anybody that was visually impaired in my whole life, in my community. Even though I live in a very big city, usually don't come across anybody really. So that's how I started that. And I learned that in order for people to have their Instagram posts accessible for the visually impaired, they need to use their screen reader. And you have to make sure you put in alt text in your photos. And you need to do image descriptions. And audio descriptions are also helpful. And I also started to support small businesses by tagging them in my posts so that the vision impaired community could see those items and I could describe them so we could all help each other. And so that's how Purpose in View started.
That is an incredible story, Anne. And I really love how through your own experiences of learning and finding ways to educate yourself and learn how to approach things in a different way, you recognized those barriers and obstacles for people and have taken a role in, trying to build those connections,
Yeah.
but also to educate others as well. Because I think so often we don't know what we don't know. And when I heard you speak as part of the Jilly Academy event online, it just opened my mind and filled it with a million questions about how I can do better and what does accessibility on social media look like, and what are the things that I need to be thinking about? And as one person, what can I be doing better to make sure that what I'm sharing and how I'm interacting with the platform, I'm being more inclusive. So I can't wait to dive into all of these things more with you. And thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. And speaking of stories, storytelling is really one of my favorite engagement activities as a teacher. And I always find, like, I've taught little kiddos and all the way up to adults, and it doesn't matter your age. Stories are just something that make content and ideas more meaningful and relevant, and they get people to sit up and pay attention and get curious and really soak it all in. And I'm curious what it means for you to be a digital storyteller and what you've learned in taking on that role.
For me, it's specifically leveraging social media, especially Instagram, because it's that visual medium, and taking that challenge on and just captivating the sighted community and then connecting it with the visually impaired community so that the visually impaired community is immersed in that experience. So many people have a hard time imagining that visually impaired community use technology, they use their phone, and they can use it very well. But without it, it's actually a lifeline for us there. Thank goodness for technology because, our camera provides so much for us. It helps us magnify, it helps us read text. It just does so much for us. Like, I cannot live without my phone. But if people see me with my cane and my phone, they question the validity
Yeah.
of my blindness, right? But that's the education piece that I want to send out, is that blindness is a spectrum, and really there are many different levels of blindness. And really, I believe the percentage is about 91% of blind people can see something, whether it's some light perception, shadows, lights. So we all have some ability to make out something. And our phone is a very useful tool, and it's a way for us to be connected. So to connect the sighted community and the visually impaired community through this medium and through storytelling so that we can engage each other and connect each other and then make that bridge. And I can use music and audio descriptions and include that alt text in there. And then when you can craft that engaging story and use those digital tools, you can really convey a message that is effective and that you can educate and bring awareness without even people actually realizing it, that they're learning something. And because a lot of people is like you say, what people don't know, they don't know. But once you become aware, you realize, wow, that's great, and it opens your minds to different perspectives and different views on how we see things.
It really, really does. And I I definitely want to dive into some of those specific things that we as individuals can do better with when it comes to social media. I feel like I have a great deal to learn in this area. But before we head in that direction, I wanted to chat about your TEDx talk, which I've watched more than once and listened to, and I shared with my husband as well. called Blindsided. And I was wondering, what was that experience like for you? And what were some of the key messages and takeaways that you shared for those people who haven't yet checked that out?
Well, it was definitely something that I never dreamed I would do. It was not on my bucket list. But when I saw the application, I decided to just go for it. I'd only just done one speech before that, and I just wrapped it up. But I thought I'll take it as a learning experience. And I was so surprised to actually be selected as a speaker. But then when I thought, oh no, what have I done? And then I struggled with really severe imposter syndrome. I mean, everybody was master's degree, lawyer, teacher, and I'm a mom. A mom is a big job, but I'm a mom, and I don't have that education level or anything like that. But I know I have a message, and I know I have an important story, and I have something that I want to share. But I knew that I had a beginning to my talk and I had an end, but I couldn't quite connect it. And with this imposter syndrome, I kind of froze and I really had this terrible writer's block. And normally when I have a writer's block, I'll have it for a while, but it'll eventually lift. It wasn't lifting. It was taking a while. And then tickets were being sold. And I was like, I don't have a speech yet. But what I realized is the importance of showing up. So, persistence, resilience, showing up to all my coaching sessions, even though I was so scared, had all these feelings, and I didn't have anything to show for myself, but continually showing up and being there in the face of it all was what helped me the most. And I learned a lot about myself during that time and that I can do it. I can do it. And I did it.
You
And I did
did.
it really well.
You did. You did
Yeah.
an amazing
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. Once it all came together, just the light bulbs and the sparks went off and I was like, yes, this is it. And the audience that I was speaking to, I knew was the university. I knew they were university students, faculty, admin, and that's the message that I was carrying through. But I also knew it was going to have a ripple effect to a larger audience. It was going to be recorded and viewed to a diverse amount of people. And the message that you want to hold, that you want to keep, and not only live for today, but for the future. And that someone can also pick up from and carry forth or start anew, or if I ever do this again, I can carry on and speak of. But I wanted it to be able to end at a point where there's still more that could be said. I didn't want to have fully the answer yet, but we could still talk about this and others can bring in their ideas because it's an ever evolving and there's so much impact we can do with this.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing the behind the scenes of that
Mm-hmm.
experience because I think so often we we see people giving speeches and talks, or we hear about these incredible accomplishments and things that people have, and we look at that and we don't realize that journey leading up to those
Yeah.
moments and what that experience was for that
Mm-hmm.
individual. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And kudos to you for signing up, applying, being accepted, having that moment of, oh my gosh, and struggling through, but then delivering such a beautiful and impactful talk. So I'll make sure to share a link to it in the show notes. As I said multiple times, I've listened and you did just an incredible job.
Thank
So
you. Yeah.
congratulations.
I want people to know that you can do it. No matter where you are, who you are, as long as you keep showing up and keep at it, no matter what it is, whether it's a TED Talk or anything else, you can do it. It's anything is possible.
Anything is definitely
Yeah.
possible. Absolutely. Now, I know I have, as I've said, so much to learn about accessibility and social media. And I know Instagram is a platform of focus in the work that you're doing. So how is Instagram as a social media platform when it comes to accessibility? And are there any particular areas of Instagram that just aren't very accessible or not accessible at all?
What I find interesting is that, there's so many people on the platform. It's grown so fast. And when I looked at it, Instagram's been around since 2010. Yet it it's not that accessible. Like, it's gotten better, but it's taken a long time to be accessible. And when it comes to accessible, you as the user have to go through so many steps to make it accessible. And it gets tiring for the user. It can be frustrating. And so they just kind of like get exhausted and just give up. So they think, why bother, right? And the onus gets put on the user to make it accessible. And for, think of those who are visually impaired with chronic illness. That's a lot of work and a lot of steps. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, most of the time, we're the ones making our content accessible. So it's accessible between us, but when we want to access other people's content, it's not accessible for us. So, we want to be part of those communities. We want to be able to know what's going on, but we can't access it. I have, to do a post, I've got to do multiple steps, go down, go to accessibility, go put in the alt text. If I've got a 10 image carousel post, I've got to put in the alt text for 10 images. Most people are like, oh, that's a lot of work. Right. And I think, Instagram should make it easier for everybody. Like, they do use some AI, but a lot of times it's like, this image could be and
Mm-hmm.
it's not very helpful. So at the end of the day, the user has to put it in themselves if they want it to be accurate. So I find is really challenging and difficult. And then it comes to Instagram stories, and the people don't actually realize this, but Instagram stories started back in 2016, and yet today it is still not accessible because it doesn't allow the use of voiceover or screen reader to access it. So it doesn't help at all. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you have a talking story, might help. But if you're sharing posts or there's something going on in the world and you're sharing some breaking news, you don't know what's going on. So that's where it's a real struggle. So a
Yeah,
lot of people can get left in the dark.
yeah, and that's so interesting, especially what you're talking about with stories, because that seems to be where people spend a lot of time and energy on the
Yes,
platform.
yes,
People go scroll through their stories, and it's interesting that that is an area that has so many barriers in place in terms of
yes,
even being able to make it accessible in the way
yes.
things are being shared. So, well, and many of us use Instagram personally or for
Mm-hmm.
our businesses. And
Yes,
as you're advocating, that education and awareness piece are those two things are so key to bridging that gap between the sighted and visually impaired communities. And so I know one of the things that you had shared that really resonated with me was about making hashtags accessible
yeah, yes.
and capitalizing the first letter of each word. And when
Mhm.
I started to implement that, because I'm like, that's something I can take and do.
Yes,
When you type in a hashtag, the way that it comes up in Instagram, because you get suggestions, it's all lowercase.
Yeah.
So if Instagram just made that shift within the platform, that it was already set up to be accessible and
Mm-hmm.
to have those first letters capitalized, that would make things much easier all around, right?
Exactly.
And
That would,
people, yeah, would just
yeah,
share in that way.
yeah. It would
So,
make a world of difference. It's actually even
yes,
for a sighted person, just like the regular eye, because you can see each individual word as it is instead of like a mumbo jumbo across the screen.
100%. Exactly. Sometimes you have to look at it multiple times. So it makes so much sense. So,
Yeah.
yes, that's one thing that I took away from when I was introduced to you initially and implemented. And I'm curious about what are maybe 3 things that we can do to make our social media posts more accessible for the visually impaired community. It could be including hashtags and 2 more or 3 other things that we could be doing better. I'd love to know what I can be improving on and being more thoughtful about when I'm posting and sharing.
Definitely the alt text for your photos. That's a huge one. People don't realize that we will rely on screen readers or to that's a market that's untapped. That there's so many people that you're missing by not putting in your alt text to describe your photo or your image or your graphic that you're trying to tell for your business. So that's a huge one. And the second would be image descriptions, because even if you don't have a voice reader, all the phones have voiceover or some sort of capability like that. And those are for anyone who has autism, neurodiversity, that can really help. Even if you're describing your reel or a video, sometimes those are so quick. So just having an image description of that can really help, just to slow it down, understand what that video is and what you're trying to convey. Makes a huge difference, and you can just put it in the comment section. Yeah, that would just make a big difference in itself. And for sure, the camel case for hashtags, capitalizing the first letter of each word is a huge help as well, because the screen reader or the voiceover reads it as just one word if it's not capitalized. So it will just be blah, 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 blah versus camel case.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So those would be my top 3, and that things that are simple
Mm-hmm.
to put in. If you just started with one of them today, you'd be helping a lot of people. I think the number one I would choose would be image descriptions, because that'd be helpful for so many people.
And so with image descriptions, just to clarify, make sure that I've heard you
Mhm.
correctly. So is there a place when you're making your post to share that? Or is that, as you said, you would include that in the comment section below the image?
I would put it at the bottom just before my hashtags, but if you don't
Okay.
have enough room, I would write image description in comments so that the reader knows where to go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those things. I love
Yeah.
when we're learning something new and it feels like I don't know where to start in doing better. It's always
Mhm.
helpful to have those, key doable things. And as you
Mhm.
said, like give one a try.
Yes, just one. That's
Yeah.
all it takes.
And start there and
Yeah.
taking that one step forward. So thank you for sharing those, because those are
Yeah.
completely doable strategies that probably people didn't realize the importance of them,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm.
yeah,
Once you get the hang of it, it actually becomes really easy.
mhm,
Because you realize, oh, this is very easy just to quickly describe it, put it there. I usually just do a copy and paste, and I'm done. So if I can do it, you could do
right.
it.
Exactly. It's like a
If I
small
could do it, you could
change,
do it.
but big impact. Small
Yes.
change, big impact.
Yes.
Exactly. So
Hmm.
thank you so much for
Hmm.
sharing those so clearly and well. And now I have 2 more things that I need
Sure.
to do better with and that I'm going to take action on the next time that I post. So thank you. And is there anything that we can do in stories to make it more helpful. So even though Instagram doesn't have things set up in a way that lends itself towards accessibility, is there something that we could do to kind of do better in that area?
This is a hard one because I have such a hard time myself.
Okay.
I struggle. I think sometimes I don't go on stories because I know it's so inaccessible for my community that
Okay.
I spend more time in my feed. But if you're doing stories and you're talking, just talk, verbally describe things. That's a big help. It's so hard because we would love to share things. It becomes very difficult. But if, those that have a lot of difficulty with vision just unfortunately end up not going on stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the sad reality of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish I had an answer for that one.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and maybe, it's good to talk about these things and bring awareness to these things and get these conversations going. And then you hope that maybe there isn't something so much that the users can do in this particular instance, but that Instagram could do
Yes.
better
Yes.
on their end to then
Yes.
support users to be able to share content
Yes.
more accessibility. So
Yes.
it all starts with those conversations, talking about
Exactly.
it, bringing it to light, letting people
Yes.
know. So, hey, Instagram, do better.
Yes.
Do
And that's
better.
why I deliberately put it in my TED talk.
I love
Yeah.
that. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing, even then, as a community of Instagram users,
Yeah.
like, let's get that message out there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
put that, positive, constructive pressure on the
Yeah.
people that have created
Yeah.
this platform to
Yeah.
find some creative solutions, because there's always a solution.
Yes,
There's
there
always a solution.
always a solution, and I'm positive that there is a solution.
Yes.
I'm positive that there is a solution.
So we'll just keep talking about this more and more and get that
Yes,
message out there, and
yes,
and
yes.
yeah,
And
and
don't you want more people on your platform and more
ex-
engagement? Like, don't you?
exactly. Exactly. That's what it's all about. So
That's what it's
there
all
you
about.
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love too how you brought up, with some of the accommodations or steps in making things more accessible, how it benefits. It's not only for the visually
Hmm.
impaired and blind community. There's broader issues and benefits in terms of accessibility for others as
Yes,
well. And
yes,
so I think
absolutely.
that's important to really remember. And I mean, in general, people, all of us learn in different ways and
Hmm.
process information best when we see, hear, do, engage with things in multiple ways. So, Instagram,
Yes,
increase the ways that we can all engage more in
yes,
different ways in your
yes.
platform so that we can make it more accessible for everybody.
And and the reality is, with the stats, 1 in 4 report having a disability, and that's report having a disability.
Right.
So it's a club that we can all join. I suddenly became part of that club. If you look at me, nobody would think that I have any sort of disability, but I do. And there's invisible illnesses out there and conditions, and we should start with accessibility in mind because it can affect any of us at any time. And we think of our kids, we think of parents, adults, anyone, our parents. Let's just make it easy for everybody.
Mm. No,
Right?
I
Why
love
go
that
back?
message.
Why go back and change it after the fact?
Yeah, just
Let's just start from the
start.
beginning, right from the
Exactly.
beginning. Yeah.
Right from the beginning, think about how what we're doing or how we're setting things up, be it a social media platform or
Hmm.
really anything. How can we
Anything.
make it more accessible
Yeah.
for the people who are using, enjoying, and being a part of
Yes.
the experience?
Yes.
I agree. I agree. Now, you had shared with me that every October is Blindness Awareness Month. And I looked into it briefly and just read that it's about bringing a heightened focus on the blind and visually impaired community and the realities of living without sight. So I'm wondering what might be some of the opportunities and resources available during the month of October to learn more.
So with Blindness Awareness Month in October, World Sight Day is, let me check here, is on the second Thursday of October.
Okay.
And, usually following hashtags like hashtag World Sight Day is a good way to follow along. In Canada, we have CNIB, Canadian National Institute for the Blind, and they have on their page their calendar. So it talks a lot about their fundraising and events. And same with Fighting Blindness Canada. They have a lot of virtual and in-person webinars and events as well that recognize World Sight Day and October Blindness Awareness Month. And in the States, they celebrate White Cane Safety Day and Blind Americans Equality Day on October 15th. And this time we also talk about getting your eyes checked and eye health and always just bringing that awareness forward. So it's really a month to really keep that in mind. Of course, eye health is important all year, but that's the time we do a lot of advocacy and fundraising during that time.
Yeah, and it's great. I'll make sure to share some of the resources that you've mentioned as well. And I think you're right. It's something we need to be thinking about all the time, but I like that there's that designated time to plant those seeds.
Yeah.
That designated time to remind people, as you said, about eye health and getting your eyes checked, and to get people curious and learning more, and directed to some of these resources and organizations and fundraising efforts that are happening. So I think that's fantastic. And I did not know about October being designated as Blindness Awareness Month. So I'm excited to have an opportunity to learn more as well. As a teacher, I was thinking back about, who are the students that I worked with that this might have been a struggle for. And I haven't taught in the classroom for a while now, but I started off teaching junior high, and I actually did have two students who were visually impaired, and they had a learning assistant working specifically with them. And I remember, as a new teacher myself, and kind of being in that day-to-day survival mode, and as a teacher, you always want to do your best for every student in your classroom. How much I learned from this assistant and my students, as far as like teaching in a classroom environment, and the things that I needed to think about. And one of the things, in sort of reflecting back, was the things that I learned from these two students and from this learning assistant were a lot of the things that I could do to support the students in my classroom were good for all the kids in my classroom.
That it's exactly true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to learn more all year, and in particular to see some of the things that are being shared through the month of October. Now, you are a teacher in the work that you're doing. I've learned already so much from you, even from the first moment that I just watched and listened to you speak in your conversation with Jillian Harris. And I'm wondering, in looking back on your own journey, who would be a favorite teacher? What would be a favorite learning experience that you've had? And why does that person or experience stand out for you?
Well, it's interesting, but actually my teachers are actually my children. They're actually my children. They have taught me to be a better person, to see the world in a whole new way, to experience the world in a whole new way, and just realize what's important in life, and know that what I do and say has a ripple effect. And seeing them just be good humans is really everything that I could hope for. Yeah, they are the ones that actually teach me. They teach me how to social media, really. But yeah, they have been my biggest teachers in life, really. Yeah.
As you're saying that, you're making me tear up, actually. Because it is so true. And
Yeah.
yeah, our children really are such amazing teachers, social media and beyond, as you
Yes.
said.
Yes.
And you'd shared with me that your children are all grown up,
Yeah.
which I'm not quite there, but it's something that's close enough that
Mhm.
I feel excited about, as they step out into the world. Because you said your children are 30, 25, and 21. Is that right?
21. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. As they head out into the world and do their things and find their way. Oh, it's exciting, but it's a mixed bag of emotions.
It's a mixed bag. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, it's amazing to see just the great people that they are, like that they've become, and actually with, how they've handled disability and how they are very empathetic and they recognize others and know how to show compassion and recognize how to help others and critical thinking has really has been good. Yeah, yeah. So
well,
I've learned a lot from them.
well, and it's a testament to you as well. You've raised good humans.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, when you look back at your own journey,
Mhm.
I'm wondering what is something that you are the most proud of?
I'm proud of the resilience that I've been able to have, being able to not only get through my diagnoses, both of them, move through them and move forward with them. And, even through the grieving process, the somewhat denial process for a while, accepting it now, but then also finding positives in it and creating positive change. I'm grateful for the journey. And, there's different chapters in your life, and you just are on another chapter now.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think, oh, I've lost everything because I'm not able to work anymore. But actually, I've gained actually so much more. I have so much to offer and give, and it makes me excited. And I'm so glad that I can connect with so many in the visually impaired community and so many sighted. Like I've met so many amazing people. I can't even begin to tell you that how much it has made a difference in my life. And the conversations that I've had have been incredible. Like it's, I've learned so much. It's, not only them learning from me, but I've learned so much as well. And I think that's what's cool is because if you remain open and you embrace everything, you, you're always learning. You're always gonna keep growing. And I think that's the great thing about life. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always more to learn.
Yes.
Always. I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
What is something that you would love to learn about or something that you would love to learn how to do?
I'd love to learn more about interior design and aging in place, universal design. That's something that I've always had a passion for, but I'd like to spend more time doing. Yeah.
What is a place that is at the top of your travel bucket list?
At the top would be Greece and Italy.
Both amazing, yes.
Yeah.
What is a book, podcast, movie, or TV show that you've enjoyed recently?
I actually don't watch too much because just with my vision loss and my headache thing, but I actually listened to your podcast last night with Stacey Watts about the building your online presence. That was amazing. I was so impressed. I learned so much about, social media from her and your content buckets and then, what to do if you get hacked and things like that. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Yeah, that was really, really so interesting to learn. So I really, really enjoyed that. So I've got
Oh,
to go and listen to some more.
well, thank you so much for listening. And yes, Stacy is a wealth of knowledge and just an all around amazing human being, just like generous and so helpful and kind. So, yeah, she had so many fantastic things to share in that episode. It was a
Yes,
fun conversation to have.
yes.
But thank you so
And she had
much
a
for
great,
listening.
great story too. Yeah,
Oh, she
yeah,
does.
yeah.
Yeah, such an interesting story. Yeah, it's my favorite thing about having a podcast is this incredible opportunity to sit down and have really interesting conversations with really interesting and amazing people. And it's like on a personal level, it's such a gift. That
Yes.
the person shares their time with me and like
Hmm.
makes the time and space to sit down and share their story with me and share the things they've learned and talk about the things that they're doing. And then, yeah, there's just so many takeaways. I learn
Hmm.
something. I learn a million things, I feel, in every conversation. It's like I get ideas of things I want to dive into further.
Yeah,
It makes questions come up for me. I have a book list that's like a mile long to read
oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
all kinds of things. Yeah, because there's
yeah,
just so much to learn. But thank you so much for your
yeah,
kind words. And
yeah.
if you could sit down and have a conversation with someone that you would love to learn from, who would it be and why?
Well, and interestingly, I just did a program with Vocal Eye, which is a audio description program that does live audio description for plays locally here in Vancouver, and they do online Zoom. And they partnered up with a actor and writer named Marilyn Nori, who does My Mother's Story. And so I had a chance to do my own mother's story, and she has since passed away, 20 years ago. So if I could sit down with my mom to speak with her, that's what I want. Because as I was going through her story, there were so many things that I wish that I could ask her. And when you look at women's history, I think, wow, she accomplished a lot. As an Asian woman in the 80s, she climbed up the ladder in in male-dominant field so high up. And I'm like, how did she do that? So that's something I would love to ask her. Like, I would love to know. And what made her decide to go into this field, right? In the 1980s, right? So that really piques my curiosity. I mean, as kids, we didn't care. We just did what we did, right? But yeah, it's so interesting to me. So that's a conversation I would love to have.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
So, and I know I've sort of mentioned this already, but I really feel like education and learning plays just an important and integral role in all facets of our lives. We can always find ways and places where teaching and learning are happening. So, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you could share to empower or support people in their own teaching and learning journeys?
I think, always be curious and always be open to never stop learning. Have a growth mindset and encourage that critical thinking. I think that is so important to have that critical thinking and be always embracing diversity and inclusion. And that's how we by keeping our open-mindedness and always just practice empathy and be an active listener. For me, I love to listen. I always listen with my heart, and I just love to listen and learn from people. I don't. I don't always love to like talk, but I love to listen and learn and hear people and their thoughts. And that's how I learn.
That's great advice. Taking those pauses and really listening and the critical thinking and
Hmm.
empathy and that openness. So, so
Hmm.
important. And I want to thank you so very much for saying yes when I reached out to you to be a guest on my podcast and for sharing your time and your story and all your words of wisdom with us today. If our listeners want to learn more about you and all the things that you're up to, where are the best places to find you?
And the best place to find me is on my website at purposeinview.com. And you can find me on my TED Talk, which is on YouTube, and it's under Anne Mock, titled Blindsided. And I'm most active on Instagram. And I do have TikTok, Pinterest, and Facebook, but I'm not that active there, but I am there.
I'll make sure to share all that in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining me, Anne. It was amazing to connect with you and to learn from you today.
Thank you so much, Tiana. It's been so good spending the time with you today as well.